Tune in to Alternate Ending now.
Welcome back to Alternate Ending. I'm Brennan, correspondent out in the field, aka my apartment. I'm here with the director and co-screenwriter of 2020's Freaky, out Friday the 13th of November. It's Chris Landon. Welcome to Alternate Ending, sir.
Well, howdy. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay. Oh, well, actually, we just discussed this and I already forgot it. We need to do the disclaimer. Chris is probably going to be eating some popcorn during this interview.
I'm going to be eating popcorn during this, so if you hear strange crunching, you will know what that is.
Yeah, no mysteries here. But so basically, we got to talk about Freaky a little bit, even though there's so much we can talk about. Do you want to tell people, the elevator pitch log line of what it's about, and then we can talk about
of course,
more in-depth kind of.
And by the way, it's a movie that's easily translatable in a elevator pitch, because that's how Michael Kennedy got me involved. Freaky is the story of a shy wallflower in high school who swaps bodies with a serial killer. And she has 24 hours to track him down and switch back, or she's trapped in his body forever.
No, that's very elevatory. I wasn't even ready for it to be done.
I was like, that's it, guys. I mean, that's the whole fucking movie.
Yeah, no, that's, that is what it is. It's a, body swap slasher movie.
It's Freaky Friday the 13th. I mean, that was how Michael pitched it to me.
I wasn't sure because look, I co-hosted a podcast with Michael, so I knew that's what it was called, but I didn't know if legally we were allowed to even
Well, we're not. It's funny, so when Michael first pitched the idea to me, and by the way, for context, he called me and said, "Hey, will you come listen to a pitch, because I'm going to go out and start kind of pitching to places." And so I was going to be like a dry run. I was like his practice partner. And so he says, okay, so it's called Killer Body. And it's basically Freaky Friday the 13th. And so I stopped him right away and I was like, listen, don't do Killer Body. It doesn't feel right. But you should call it Freaky Friday the 13th. Even if you can't keep that title, it's such an automatic sort of oh, I know what that movie is. So that's the title. And of course we kept that as our working title throughout the process. And then of course, when it came time to submit the film, when we had finished making it, we immediately got a cease and desist letter from our friends at Disney.
That tracks.
So and it was they kind of thought maybe they could sneak it under some sort of parody kind of, there's some parody legal thing that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
But Disney also had a trillion copyrights and things. And so our sneaky, or at least my sneaky solution to this was just to call it Freaky, knowing it was coming out on Friday the 13th. So it was all going to be there on the fucking one sheet together. So, oh well.
Yeah, people can, if you want to connect the dots, you can.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, they're not there. It's fine. Don't think about it.
But it's just called Freaky. So there you go. It's a freaky horror movie. So,
of course. Well, okay. Speaking of, obviously you directed Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You.
mm-hmm.
So you've kind of become the let's reinvigorate the slasher movie guy.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something that you've had any sort of curatorial hand in becoming, or is this just kind of happened to you?
I mean, I would love to sort of pretend like this was some sort of premeditated thing, but it really wasn't.
Or at least did you lean into it, basically?
I think I definitely have leaned into it. And I think I've always been interested in trying to, reinvent or approach different subgenres, with a kind of pop sensibility. And that is something that I did before Happy Death Day. I made a film called A Scout's Guide to the Zombie Apocalypse that a lot of people didn't see. But that was Goonies, meets a George Romero movie. It was a zombie movie, but with Boy Scouts. And I approached that film with a very playful kind of Amblin-esque tone. And so it's something I've been kind of doing for a bit, but always just sort of slightly different. But I think Happy Death Day was a film that really clicked with people, both conceptually and sort of in execution, I guess. And so that's kind of, I think, what helped sort of start setting that path a little bit more.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, in that case, I do have a question, because you are right. Like, obviously, the genre bending kind of mix and match approach is not something that is unique to your current work. It's something you've been doing for a long time. But when you're approaching, a Happy Death Day or a Freaky, and you're boiling down, like, okay, I've got these kind of like high concept comedy elements, I've got the slasher element. What do you think are the when you were boiling down the slasher to like the barest elements of what you wanted to include? What are you looking at, and what are you saying, like, this is necessary to make it a slasher movie and to make it work and be compelling, like, as a slasher, kind of separate from the other elements you throw
From
in?
all the other elements, yeah. I mean, I think Michael and I talked about this quite a bit, and obviously, first and foremost, we needed the cold robotic killing machine, of a stalker. So, because we were sort of, I don't want to say we were parodying them, but like we were sort of nodding and poking a little fun at Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers and sort of these sort of classic slashers, from the 80s. So we knew that we needed, like, yeah, that guy who's big and menacing and wears a really cool mask, and has just enough of a backstory, but not too much of a backstory. Of course, it probably involves a dysfunctional relationship with his mother, and a lot of that kind of stems all the way back from just sort of like, the Ed Gein of it all, which is where I feel like so many people have drawn their sort of your leather faces and, so forth. So, and that was kind of it, in terms of like what the killer needed to be, in the movie, because he's sort of an avatar, it's not like he's supposed to be a real person, at least not initially. And what's kind of fun, I think, about the movie and when people see it is that, he has very little dialogue. And when Catherine Newton plays the killer, that's maintained, but you actually do start to see a personality appear. And that's where I think we start to step out from the sort of classic slasher killer trope, because he starts to become kind of sarcastic and kind of, he's kind of like a little bitch underneath all of it, which is fun.
Well, I think that's interesting, because like you are, you're putting this character in a position that it's never been in before. Like, through the prism of somebody else, you can understand other things about who this person is, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But okay, one more. I look, I have not been privy to the screener of this movie per se, so I have not seen it, but I've been privy to a lot of the conversations kind of leading up to and into the creation of this movie from like the screenplay side of things.
Yeah.
So I am aware that there is like a pretty heavy like queer element. There is, as far as I have heard, an openly queer character in the movie. And look, pretty much all of your films have had a queer element to one degree or another, whether it's, in your face or more subtle.
Yeah.
But I don't know, what approach did you take in trying to incorporate those elements into the script? Like, what were you thinking about accomplishing with this particular character in this kind of tone?
Well, I mean, right off the bat, Michael created the character of Joshua, and he by design wanted a character that was that was openly gay, confident, arguably the most confident character in the whole film, and out in other ways too, not just sort of like, I'm going to be funny and sassy, which he is, because so is Michael.
He sure is.
But also like openly openly sexual, you know, in a way that is typically, and I think traditionally, reserved for like horny straight teens in 80s slasher movies, you know, only he's openly horny for his classmates, you know, particularly some of the jocks at his school. So, you know, like he's on Grinder in one scene, you know, and talking about how there's like nobody to fuck in town. And so it was important to us that, that we have that character. And I think I can hopefully speak for Michael, and this is certainly speaking for myself, that, you know, we were both closeted queer kids in high school, who were both really, who were picked on, and bullied quite a bit. And so for us, having the opportunity to create a character like Joshua and make him a lead character in the film and someone who survives, spoiler alert, that was really important to us, because it felt like we were able to sort of right some wrongs, you know, and sort of fulfill. There was a wish fulfillment aspect to that character in the film, but there's so much queerness in this movie, from costumes to music to jokes to, just to the whole idea of a body swap. You know, I think there's so much to unpack, when you're dealing with a concept, that is about swapping identities, and in this case, not only swapping genders, because again, you know, when I was really struggling with my sexuality, I remember having these feelings of like, well, fuck, if I could just be a girl, my life would be easy. Like I could just openly like the guys that I like, and it wouldn't be an issue. And so there was so much of that was there for us to kind of play with, from sort of through, or at least to see things through a bit of a queer lens. And we also just like making the movie, you know, the experience of making the movie, you know, it was so cool to have this sort of trinity of gays on set all the time, which was Michael and Misha, who plays Joshua, and myself. And also we had other queer, crew members too. We would even have like sort of like these Beyonce dance offs, like when we were like between setups, and like it got real gay. And it was really fun to kind of, and it was an energy that kind of, I think, permeated through the whole crew, and everyone really like had fun. So, yeah, it's a proudly queer movie, I think.
Would you say, do you think, you know, just internally, do you think this is your queerest movie, or do you think there's a movie that still holds that title?
It's not my, well, it's probably the queerest film that I had made.
Fair.
I wrote other movies that were intensely more queer than this, but nobody would make them. And I think that's something else that's quite interesting, because, I think it's a sign of the times. I mean, look, this movie's infinitely more commercial than these other things that I wrote, because they were really sort of deeply personal movies. But the fact that, like, you know, we made this movie, that we wrote this character, that we did the things that we did, and nobody blinked for a second, is at least a positive signal to me, that everyone's kind of really into seeing more representation, in popular cinema now.
And let me ask you this, like, okay, well, first of all, just you know, you talk about like having all these kind of queer voices on set. Do you think that's probably the most like queer involvement, like behind the scenes, that you've had on a movie before?
Oh God, yeah.
Okay. So let me ask you this: did you feel more like of a sense of camaraderie, or did you feel more heard, like as a director, as a creative voice, like in that space?
No, I don't think I felt more heard as a director, because I
Mhm.
mean, when you're the director, like, you're heard.
People gotta listen.
That's their job. So it's not like, no, it just felt like it was just an energy shift. And it sounds, it sounds, abstract, you know, when I say it, but, I've spent so many years on sets that are just sort of, you know, predominantly heterosexual and predominant, you know, like I'm often like the only gay on set, you know, or at least it feels that way. And so it was just nice to know that there was so much queer energy kind of there. And there was, and that there were, and that it was such an inclusive, open set that gave everyone permission to be who they are. And that is something that I strive for on every movie. I just want everyone to feel welcome, and I want everyone to feel heard. Um, but it was just, yeah, for me, it was just a really cool experience. And by the way, you know, I've always, on most of the movies I've directed, I've always been sort of like the only writer, or I've been the guy who rewrote someone else, and that writer was not part of the process. And so this was the first time where like I had the writer with me. You know, the other writer was always by my side, and we got to like come up with shit at the last second together and laugh and have fun. And I had such a there was this vicarious experience that I was having with Michael too, because this is the first movie that he's ever had made. Um, and I just got a real charge out of watching him watch his scenes happen. You know, like I would see this light in his eyes, and an excitement that I remember feeling the first time that happened to me. And so that was really cool too.
That's really sweet. I think it speaks to your generosity that is like such a warm experience for you. But I'm also curious because, yeah, obviously, you know, if you know you have this other kind of authorial presence with you that you maybe didn't have before, at least in the same kind of strictly like literally present in the space kind of way. Does that change how you think of your kind of authorial voice as a director? Does that change kind of the decisions that you're making on set?
It doesn't necessarily change the decisions, but it certainly empowers them. You know, I think before, um, I've never been an indecisive person. I think I've always had that as a strong suit. And to some, you know, I'm sure there are some people in my life, like my husband, who would sometimes call that a flaw. Because I always know, I think, what I want. But sometimes I didn't have the confidence to stand up for that, you know. I could still get steamrolled by people, people who were, um, theoretically higher up in the food chain. And now I kind of don't take no shit, um, which is great. And that's the part I think that's helped a lot. And I've also really been able to hone in and focus on, um, a the ability and the desire to sort of like make movies that I really want to make, um, versus things that I thought I was supposed to make, which was that was a big struggle of mine, for many years. Is that I felt like, wow, well, I've worked really hard, but I'm still sort of in a place of I'm lucky. You know, that was the thing, that kind of a broken record that played in my head. You're lucky, you're lucky, you're lucky. Don't blow it. And so I often would sort of just take on shit that I didn't even care about, because I thought that's what I was supposed to do, or other people told me that was what I was supposed to do, and then my heart wasn't in it. And those are the things that usually went south.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to the imposter syndrome that a lot of people have, where it's like, well, I don't belong here. Everyone else knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: if you're now in a space of, you know, we're not going to be taking this shit, like, just like psychologically and maybe even physiologically, like, how do you approach that? Like, what, first of all, you know, when did that change kind of happen, and how do you make yourself behave that way, if that makes sense?
Right.
Because that, you know, it's an active thing.
It is an active thing, and it's something that you have to be sort of cognizant of all the time, and sort of and you have to really try to and practice it, um, in a respectful way. I think it really did happen after Happy Death Day. Because Happy Death Day was a movie that was really personal to me, um, and it felt like the closest thing to a movie that was a direct reflection of my personality. And every sort of like, I felt like all the sort of like the things that are me were up there. And when it was really well received and embraced by people, that was when I really kind of felt like, okay, like and it was one of the first times I was able to shake off that imposter syndrome feeling, because I really did struggle with that for a long, long time. And then when I made Happy Death Day 2, while it wasn't as sort of financially successful of a film, it was still a movie that felt like genuinely me, genuinely my personality and my voice, and something that I was really proud of making. That kind of continued to sort of, I think, shore up my confidence. So that by the time I got to Freaky, I just felt very comfortable, and I felt really confident in all the choices and the decisions that I was making for the movie.
Well, that's good. But let me ask you this. Someone is presenting you with some shit and they're like, here, Chris, take it. How do you refuse?
I just gently push their hand away and say, that doesn't smell good. I'm so sorry, it's a pass. No, I mean, there's different kinds of shit that come your way. And there's shit that like you have to smell because it's kind of your shit, And so like in reference to sort of, like when you're making a film, when you're having budget problems, it's not like I get to just be like, crack a fan open and, say, oh, send me money. So I got to deal with shit still.
And no one's free. Everybody poops.
Yeah. But there are like, for example, I won't name the movie and I won't name the people, but like when I was making this movie one time at a studio, I had people around me who were like, you can't cast that person. I mean, I literally had people say, tell me that like, I couldn't cast this actress that I really liked because she wasn't hot enough. And when I argued with them, they also told me that like I wouldn't know what a hot girl is.
Oh, so we're just doubling down on the
so they doubled down on like, oh, you're gay, so why would you know? And shit like that. And I kind of took it, to some degree I took it, and it actually ended up working out in my favor because the person that they thought was really hot, ended up reading the script and then it was against her religious principles or something. And so she backed out.
Oh.
So I still got the person I wanted.
That's how you know you've written a good script.
Yeah. But anyways, it was still like, I was taking that shit. And now it's nothing I will entertain for a second. It's just not even feasible. And those kinds of things have kind of cropped up here and there, and I just shut it down politely and with respect, but I shut it down.
No, that's good. And I think it's good for people to know that, I don't know, it's not that there won't be consequences to, actions that you take, especially when there are people in charge who, are trying to make decisions for you.
Yeah.
But there is a way to approach it that, you can at least have a clean conscience approaching it.
Yeah. I just want the mistakes that I make in movies to be my mistakes, and not because I rolled over and let somebody bully me into something,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad you've reached that point.
Oh, I'll backslide. But don't you worry.
No, life is a journey. There are switchbacks. But yeah, no, I think it's good that you're there, and I'm glad that that's the environment that Freaky is coming out of, because it seems like it's poised to be, something really special, and that I'm really excited to see. And I know a lot of people are excited to see Freaky, but also, because of the whole, I don't know if you've heard of it, but there's a pandemic on. We're having a bit of a time.
Yeah, that's so weird. I would know.
Yeah, so I imagine distribution's going to be a little weird for
It
movies.
goes beyond weird. It's like a shit show.
Yeah.
It is a daily fucking disaster. I have to deal with this stuff every day, so it's like it's quite fresh, you know.
Yeah.
Especially because you know, like I have a movie, and that that we're trying to release in theaters right now.
Hmm.
So that's kind of wackadoodle. And I understand why, and I understand sort of to some degree the economics of it. And I realize that there are plenty of places in this country and in the world that are open and that have sort of figured out some air quotes safe version of doing it. But as a filmmaker, it's very weird to live somewhere where you won't go see your movie in a movie theater, but other people will. And so there's a lot to kind of to reconcile there. And also just because I want people to see the movie, and I actually do want people to be able to see it in a theater, but I want that to happen safely too.
Yeah,
So
of course.
important.
Well, let me ask you this. I am not claiming to know anything about the distribution window that we're looking at here,
Mhm,
but I will say, like, most likely the proportion of people watching this movie for the first time will probably be at home.
mhm.
Just, statistically, like, I mean, where I live, I don't think I can go to a theater unless it's a drive-in. But there's limitations on that.
Yeah.
But okay, so if someone is watching a movie at home, whatever the window before the VOD release is,
Mhm.
what would you recommend that they do to kind of or kind of set up their home to be the perfect freaky viewing kind of experience? There could be snacks, there could be costumes or props, whatever. But
Oh,
do you
I
have
think,
any recommendations?
I mean, shit, if you can do all the above, um, I think you should definitely, if you're living with other people, I think you guys should invite each other to sort of dig into each other's wardrobes. Um,
Ooh, genius.
so I think that's a nice way to start the mood. Um, you definitely need a lot of junk food, a lot of shit to eat. I'm eating popcorn now, so of course popcorn is like that's a standard staple that is required. I don't trust people who don't like popcorn. So that's a must. No, I just think really it's about like um, the movie is true. It's true escapist entertainment. Like it is really fun. It is funny. I think. I hope.
Mhm.
And has lots of fun jumps and scares and things in it as well. Um, but it has heart too. And that's definitely something that I always try to bring to my movies, because I think you want to have an emotional connection with the characters. So I think people should just kind of um, just get really comfortable and hopefully forget about all this bullshit for a couple hours, and that's certainly what I have been looking for, um, in what I'm watching right now is just some way to disappear from this place.
Yeah, I feel that. Well, let me ask you this. Like in your recent kind of watch list, what's something that's kind of standing out that you would recommend?
This is the question. I've had this question like once or twice on my junket, and it's the worst fucking answer, because it's embarrassing. So here we go.
Okay.
Um, so when I met my husband eight 8 years ago, 9 years ago, 8 years ago, I don't know. I had started to watch Game of Thrones. It was in its first season. I was really into it. I thought it was really cool. I tried to get him to watch it with me. He has like some kind of viewing narcolepsy thing. So I tried to watch the first episode with him probably 3 or 4 times, and he fell asleep every time. By the way, he falls asleep in my movies too, which is really, something
Flattering.
special. Yeah. That's love, folks. So anyway, so we just gave up. we just gave up. He's like, I'm not watching that shit. It's boring. It's Lord of the Rings. I don't give a fuck. And so I was like, all right. And then, of course, it became this massive hit and everybody loved it. And then finally enter the pandemic, where we ain't got shit to do. So I convinced him to do it again. And we are now almost at season 6.
Well, congratulations.
So we've been on the Game of Thrones trend caboose for a few months now, and so outside of that, I really haven't been able to see very much. I was able to pop in and catch like Palm Springs, because I was very curious about that movie because of the time loop thing, which, by the way, highly recommend. Really enjoyed the film, and I haven't seen much else, which is a real bummer.
No, that's totally fair. I don't think I watched a single movie in the month of May because the thing that I cracked on, like Game of Thrones, was I watched Sex and the City fully through for the first time over the pandemic.
Okay, so I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, no, we all have our, private at home secrets that we don't
Yeah.
necessarily share on Twitter or whatever.
But there's something about the fervor behind Game of Thrones where like we were constantly and consistently like publicly shamed for not watching the show. Like we were committing some kind of fucking culture crime. And so we just were like, let's just figure this out and see if it's any good, which, by the way, I love it. It is really good.
Yeah. Well, do you think maybe the kind of public shaming element of it, like the shame disappeared because your access to the public also disappeared?
Yes. 100%. Like the stars aligned for this whole sort of viewing run. Because when people like in our sort of friend circle hear about, when they heard we were watching the show, they were just like making fun of us all the time. Whatever. Don't give a shit.
Whatever, people are going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
As long as you're having a good time. That's all if you can access a good time right now, you got to do it.
That's key. That is key. I mean, look, there's been silver linings, for sure. I mean, I know it's hard to see the positive sometimes, but like I've had so much time at home with my family, like with my kids, which is definitely something that doesn't always happen because, directing, especially, you have to leave your family sometimes for long periods of time. And that is like soul crushing for me. So like the fact that I had this like forced mandated time alone with my kids like was amazing.
That's really beautiful. And yeah, I mean, you at least get to recharge that battery, like if not any other ones.
It's a fascinating battery though, because while you're recharging it, you're also depleting it because they wear you the fuck out.
It's like an iPhone that's over a year old.
Yeah, totally. It's a very good analogy and a good mug. Sorry.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
For the folks at home.
Yeah, Halloween 2, guys. It's awesome.
I do all of my apartment shopping at Spirit Halloween.
It's a good place to do it.
Oh yeah. Okay, well, this is pretty much like I think we've reached the wrap up territory.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time, Chris.
Of course,
yeah, so basically mission statement, watch Freaky however you can in the safest way possible. Let's throw the folks at home a bone. Is there a scene, without like spoiling anything, that you can't wait to hear people talking about?
Yes, absolutely. And it consistently comes up every time people see the movie. And it's not necessarily a scene I think that people expect, which is why I think it always comes up.
Okay, so we're gonna know when we see it.
You'll know when you see it for sure. It was the moment when we had one very brief test screening of the movie before everything shut down, and this was when the movie was quite rough, and I was really nervous about this particular scene because I didn't know how the audience would react to it, and the whole room cheered, and clapped, and I felt very vindicated. So,
Well, I for one cannot wait to join the throngs during that
the
scene.
throngs of people at home,
Yeah.
cheering and clapping. Yeah, for sure.
No, we'll be able to hear it on, well, on the date that it releases on VOD.
Yeah,
Across the nation.
across the nation,
Claps.
you will hear a cacophony of cheering and clapping.
Yeah, so just don't worry. That's what it is.
Okay, perfect, awesome.
Okay, but yeah, let's say goodbye to the good people. Goodbye, good people. Thank you so much for
Bye, good
tuning in.
people. That was awesome.